When words fall short, when hope feels thin, listen close, let music begin.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Today it's my pleasure to introduce you to Maman Cooper. She heals, she leads. Hi, Maman.
Cynthia, so good to be with you.
Oh, well, I'm anxious to hear about what you speak on.
Yeah, so my main topic is She Heals, She Leads. And the purpose of She Heals, She Leads is I truly have seen different kinds of leadership
Yeah.
throughout my life, both in my personal and professional world. And one of the things that I've recognized, Cynthia, is, once upon a time, I used to think that if someone had the job title or if they had the credentials or if they've been in a position long enough, I thought that's what good leadership was. Because for me, I always thought this person would be a really an effective leader if they've been doing this for so long, or if they have the degree, or if they, have the title. But then as time went on, I realized that, wow, effective leadership is not just about having the title for a long time or getting the position. So She Heals, She Leads is the idea or the philosophy that you really cannot be a good, effective leader if you have not healed and addressed some of your internal patterns. So I'll give you a quick example. Like I once was at a company where I was working as an executive assistant, and my boss he will have this outburst where he will yell at me and raise his voice at me. And every time it happened, I thought to myself, okay, he must be under a lot of pressure. I don't know what it's like to be in his shoes, so I'm not even going to take it personal, and I'll just let it go. And then at some point one day, I always tell people there are a lot of things I can let go. One of the one thing I can't let go is attacking my character. So I remember one day he proceeded to call me a liar in front of a client. And when I pretty much the paper trail, he dismissed it completely. No accountability whatsoever, no apology, no, oh my goodness, I should not have done that. So for me, when it comes to leadership, I've always thought about the people who are in positions and who are lashing out, who are destructive to their team, who are destructive to their company, or even not just formal leadership, but even in the informal leadership, like a parent, for example, or an older sibling. And for me, it's always about how can you really be an effective leader if you have not really addressed the internal patterns that influence how you make decisions and how you live your life, and the internal patterns that influence your values. So She Heals, She Leads is I believe that for you, and I know it says she heals, but this applies to anyone, any gender. You can really be an effective leader if you have not healed. You can be an effective leader if you have not addressed your internal patterns. So that's what my keynote is about.
You said that he accused you of being a liar, and you know what I've learned?
What?
People who accuse, guess what? He's a liar.
It's funny you said that, because shortly after that I left the company, but then I learned maybe just 2 years after I left, that boss was actually walked out of the company by higher ups. So it's just, I always say, the way you lead always catches up to you.
Yes.
If you are a great leader who builds people up, it always catches up to you, right? Because, and I always say at some point, I think all of us, unless you're super lucky, each of us at some point have had that boss that was so terrible that we vowed, I will never be like that. And when I was getting in leadership, my example was based on what not to do. That was my example. But I will say I'm so blessed because over the past maybe 5-7 years, I have seen some really good examples of what leaders can be. So I went from, I am going to be such a good leader because I never want to be like that person, to, oh my gosh, that person is an amazing leader and I want to learn how to be like that. So it's, you can always be someone who you're either destructive and people are like, you're effective in being destructive, or you're really effective in giving really good impact. So yeah.
Well, that's the beauty of being human, is we have come to the land of contrast.
Yeah.
And good speakers present the contrast. And so people can relate to either one or both.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm anxious to hear you speak. Tell us about somebody that you made a difference.
Oh my gosh, where do I start?
Just one.
So-
Just one.
yes.
Yeah.
So I will say, and I was not planning to share this part of my story, but what most people don't know about me is growing up, I grew up in an abusive household. So, and not to get heavy on you, but growing up, I grew in an abusive household. And part of my culture being West African, you don't talk about it, and I'm talking sexual abuse. You don't talk about it. And if you tell people that this happened, you're struggling with how to navigate it, you pray about it. That's your solution. So for me, for a very long time, I didn't talk about it. In fact, I never spoke about it until when I was in college, my first year, and I took a women gender sexuality studies class where we learned about violence against women. But I remember what that class taught me is I heard different women who shared their stories, and I thought, oh my gosh, so I'm not the only one. And for me, that empowered me to speak up. So what I started doing, and to answer your question, is I started learning how to challenge myself to share, this happened to me. This happened to me. And Cynthia, it's amazing how many women will look at me and say, me too. And I'll give you a key example. I am in the process of finishing my first book. And I remember there's this lady I was working with who I had asked her to read a part of my draft for feedback. And we were in a cafe. This lady read the draft and we're discussing the draft. And in the middle of a busy cafe, she looked at me and she did this, saying, me too. She didn't say it for everybody to hear it, but she said in that moment, me too. And talking about it when I get chills. And she shared, I have never shared with anyone before. And the amount of women who I talk to, and honestly, and it's crazy, my people tell me I have the gift of having people open up to me. But even men who I've talked to, and I'm telling you, grown men who are in their 60s, and I will share part of my story, and they will say me too, and they will start crying.
Oh man.
So for me, it's like it really taught me the power of vulnerability, the power of opening up, and the power of not having it together all the time. Because when you actually have it together all the time, people don't realize that there's so much to you than the person who shows up and they're well dressed and seem to have it together. So for me, when it comes to who have I made an impact, I think for me that young lady, Mom Minnie, always sticks in my mind.
Oh, that's beautiful. Now you're from Liberia?
Yes.
And we had a little conversation before we started that because I'm all about music. I asked you, I said, so tell me about the music in Liberia. So tell everybody else about the music in Liberia.
Oh my gosh, music growing up. So just disclaimer, my parents or my family overall are from Liberia, West Africa. And because of the Civil War, my dad, escaped the Civil War in Liberia, went to Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast. So I was born and raised in the Ivory Coast, but I still grew with part of the Liberian heritage. So growing up, I grew up on Ivorian, we call it Ivorian music. So music is something, oh my goodness. Growing up, Cynthia, you wake up in the morning, there is music blasting all across the street.
Really?
And it's so hard for me to talk about music, my culture, without thinking about dancing. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, if it was always a really exciting time growing up back home. Even every now and then, I have not been back home for over 20 years. So every now and then when I miss it, I put on a playlist and I am like in my own world at home, like whatever I'm doing. So music back home is such an exciting, therapeutic. I mean, it's hard to move your body and feel depressed. It's hard to move your body and feel sad. Like it just doesn't go together. So,
oh my God. You're exactly talking about what I talk about is we were put on this beautiful earth to dance and sing and love. And that's what we're here for. That's our humanity. And then we have this stuff that happens and we work through that. But I really believe that when we get these challenges, somehow we agreed to that. We told God, put me in that human experience. I can do it. And then we get here and we go,
oh my God, are you sure? Like, was this in the fine print?
But then that's where we discover God. We discover God is in our challenges, that kind of thing. So I'm not a big preacher or anything like that. I've just learned that there is love and
Yeah,
that we are loved all the
absolutely.
time. And I'm so happy to hear, to talk to a woman who knows that dancing and music feeds the soul.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Well, so now will you come back and do a podcast when you write your book?
I would love to.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, put me on your list of people
I would
that will
absolutely love to.
interview you.
You're on the list.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll look forward to you speaking.
Thank you so much, Santa. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you. Thank you.
Sure.